For my personal investigation, I have picked the theme fashion photography as I was influenced with how just a few photographs can have such a lasting impact on not only the media around us but also on our own personal beliefs. I was also drawn to the fact that fashion photography can throw you into a whole different world separate from yours, allowing you to live your dream lifestyle vicariously through fashion photography. In order to better understand where fashion photography's strong influence came from, I began by looking at where fashion photography started. Dating all the way back to the 1910s, fashion photography has always been looked at as selling a glamorous and high-end lifestyle whilst also being a form of self-expression and commentary on the world around us. Fashion photography all began when in 1911, Edward Steichen was challenged by French publisher Lucien Vogel to create what would be some of the very first artistic fashion photographs. His photographs included artificial lighting, sharp focus, and geometric backgrounds. With these techniques, he not only created a new genre of fashion photography for the 1910s, but he also created a framework for what modern photography continued and to this day remains to be: sharply focused and artificially lit. By the 1920s, Steichen served as chief photographer for the Condé Nast magazines, Vanity Fair, and Vogue. However, contrary to the 1910s, Steichen had now adopted a more naturalistic photography style, which meant that he was capturing the trends at the time exactly as they were, giving a realistic and natural outlook of the 1920s fashion. The next big shift which occurred within fashion photography was in 1940, when American fashion photographer Louise Dale Wolfe pioneered a new standard of fashion photography. She was one of the first photographers to introduce the usage of colour within fashion photography, with her images being included in Harper's Bazaar and Vogue. Her images included garments with vibrant colours which would contrast to a plain background, putting the viewer's attention immediately on these garments. Although the effects of World War II forced photographers to use a more restrained approach due to lack of resources, the wealthier fashion photographers still pushed to photograph luxury and elegant clothing, allowing the viewers to live vicariously through these images, escaping their harsh realities. The next significant change which occurred within fashion photography was the swinging 60s movement in 1960s, where a cultural revolution took place. This meant the fashion photography industry strived towards more innovative and striking styles, and also for the prevalence of pop within fashion photographs. English fashion photographer David Bailey was one of the leading photographers which pioneered the swinging 60s movement within fashion photography and created striking and bold images which were published in magazines like Vogue and newspapers like the Daily Express. David Bailey's unprecedented photographs quickly became popularized due to their popular pop star features and playful camera angles. For example, Bailey would photograph subjects from a very high angle, making them look surreal and inhumane. This stunned audiences and encouraged photographers to be more experimental with fashion photography. From this point, photographers became much more experimental, challenging all previous norms, like in 1970s when Guy Bording created sensual fashion photographs, challenging hypersexuality within the industry, or in 1980s when Bruce Weber created provocative photographs challenging male sexuality within the industry. Lastly, with the advancements of digital photography in the 2000s and the introduction of social media in the 2010s, fashion photography began to have a great dependence on digital techniques like using Photoshop to make photographs look smooth and flawless, similar to Mario Testino's fashion photography. A fashion photographer who has the biggest influence over my work is Jürgen Teller. I am very inspired by his overexposed style of fashion photography. This is because I feel that overexposure makes his images feel more raw and spontaneous. This helps to make audiences feel like they can better relate to the models, creating a better connection between his images and the audience. Additionally, I'm very inspired by the way he positions his models. For example, in this image, the model is crouched over in a way which helps fill the frame but also create the frame more playful and experimental. I am also fascinated with his use of colour within the photographs. In this image, the model is wearing a vibrant blue dress which stands out of the frame and directs the viewer's attention to the model right away. Within my fashion photographs, I aim to also use experimental posing, as I feel that it really grabs the viewer's attention and helps to immediately direct their eyes onto the model and their clothes. I also like how experimental posing helps to fill the entire frame, making the viewer's eyes wander around the whole picture. This makes them admire the entirety of the image instead of just having a glance at the model. I also aim to use overexposed lighting within my fashion photographs in order to achieve that raw and spontaneous look, as I feel that this will make my images have a better connection with the viewers. I want to experiment between shooting in outdoor locations but also studio settings. This is because I feel that my images which I photographed in outdoor locations were successful, as the scenery helped to frame the clothing items. However, I also want to experiment with studio settings, as I feel that a simple background would help to make the model stand out of the frame, creating a more striking and harsh composition as opposed to the softer compositions of a field, for example. Lastly, I aim to experiment with the usage of vibrant colours within the outfits, accessories or makeup of my models in order to add contrast within my images, which will grab the viewer's attention due to the striking and bold effect it has on the entirety of the frame.